It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we move into a Friday. Gary, good morning.
Good morning. Just looking here at some video. You can hear the explosions in the background. Not sure exactly where this video is coming from precisely in Iran, but you see huge fireballs in the background. And I saw one video that was, I don't know if you've seen the one that was, it's a silent video, but it just showed, it looked like missile after missile after missile after.
Right.
And I don't know whether those are missiles, because when you look at what's going on, first off, they want to take out the nuclear facilities, and we'll get to that here, the specifics of that here in just a little moment. The other one is they want to take out as much as they can from the military bases or any type of infrastructure that is set up for retaliation against Israel.
In fact, taking out some specific targets in that regard, some tunnels to essentially their bunkers, if you will, in Iran that would keep them from retaliating, at least from that site.
Right.
Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about it on the video that he shared and saying this is a very successful first strike, but also Israel is saying that this is going to go on for a while. This is not over. This is not essentially saying this is not a one-off. But if you think about taking out top military people in Iran, you take out a great deal of their infrastructure and therefore their ability to retaliate, that would be successful. And the question is, what else do they have? What else does Israel have in terms of plans? Of course, we're not going to know that until after it happens, but I have no doubt it's going to go on for a while. You're at the point now. We'd been talking about this earlier this week, that it was clear that the tensions were rising because a line had been crossed. There was a certain line, basically point of no return was the concern by many, but especially Israel, being their first target, Iran's first target, and then ultimately, of course, the U.S. But if there is that thought that Israel is very concerned about that, you can't wait for Iran to pull off their version of an October 7th, because, again, it will make October 7th look like a walk in the park if they were able to develop those nuclear weapons and use those nuclear weapons in such quick fashion. And that's what basically they were alluding to and talking about. And yesterday during our show, we were talking about the sources that were saying it's really imminent that Israel is planning a strike. We just didn't know when that was going to be, but most believed it would be before the weekend. And, of course, it was carried out. And
part of the cover was the International Atomic Energy Commission, from the UN, stating first time in, they say 20 years. I must have heard that a million times. Right. It's almost as if there was, I don't care what news source it was, liberal or conservative here in the United States, the first time in 20 years, time in 20 years. Yeah. And you and I had talked about it in the last hour of the show yesterday, and then the president's response to it. And we said, if there was ever justification to go, because with the UN saying that, you and I both said, well, that's a justification that Israel needs, because if the UN says they're not following it, they can use that as a defense. And also we found it interesting the way that the President Trump responded, and we said, okay, he's not against it, right? Which means he was for what happened.
Well, I think everybody realizes Israel really has no choice, because they're the first stop on the massive global annihilation tour if Iran has their way with nukes, and I think everybody knows that. And by the way, so many in that region are kind of hoping for that. Those that do not stand with the U.S. And so I think the U.S. is at least this administration, maybe not the former administration, has been very clear about they're going to have to do what they have to do. The one thing that has been consistent from Trump, that he's been really kind of putting his foot down and repeating it in recent days, because we're learning that basically this has been in the works and it's been kind of known inside the Beltway since Monday that Israel was going to attack.
Yeah.
And so one thing you've heard by the president is Iran cannot have nukes. There's no two ways about that. They can't have nukes. Yesterday he was trying to say, look, we want them to do great. We'll do trade with them. We'll do anything, but they can't have nukes. And that really is the final, in all of this, that is there is no way around. Nobody really wants them to have the nukes because I think others in that region, even though they may not side with Israel, the last thing they want is Iran to take on the rest of the world because they understand what the retaliation ultimately would be.
Well, I don't know when the interview was done. It seemed it was done recently, but it was the Crown Prince. Yes, we know the problems with the Crown Prince, but he was talking about the fact that he goes, we don't want nukes. We don't want Iran to get nukes, but if Iran gets nukes, we get nukes.
Right.
And that is the fear. The fear isn't the fact of Iran directly attacking the United States with nuclear weapons. It's the evaporation of the Middle East
and the region, yes.
The war in the Middle East, and then what would happen because of that. I had a friend of mine that because I didn't see this until I woke up. And I was like, oh, wow. And a friend of mine, she texted me. She goes, is this World War III? And I said, no, it's what will prevent World War III.
Yes,
I
have great confidence in Israel's ability. I think that they have shown that if you're going to carry out something like this, and we really haven't seen much like this, then and their intel is superior. If they can get this, someone made the post. Look, if your enemy can get to your top generals and take out. And then impede your ability to retaliate in such quick fashion, you're in trouble.
But there are questions as to what Israel has right now in weaponry to go long term at this. There's a question of, and again, these are questions. I sense because of the response of the president that they have what they need, because one of the questions, there was an article in National Review going through the bunker busters, saying they've got these bunker busters, but they're not the best bunker busters. They don't know if Israel, and the question is, we don't know if Israel has developed more advanced bunker busters or bought them from the United States to ensure that they can go down deep enough, and we'll get to the specific sites and everything else coming up here on the show in a little bit. But they don't know. It's a great unknown, and it's a great unknown if they have what they need to defend themselves long term.
Right.
And they said it's just a great unknown. We're not saying that they don't, but there's been some, Witkoff, in fact. And again, I think he's horrible.
Yeah,
I think it's a horrible. Yeah. I think he's been horrible. But he warned Republican senators, we don't know if Israel can go through this long term. Now, I don't know if that's a warning to ensure that, they have the proper weapons that they need or better bunker busters or whatever, but you would think that they would want the bunker busters on day one that would, without question, make sure they could go deep enough to take out the main nuclear site, the one main nuclear site that they're worried about. But let's, we got time here. Let's play some of Netanyahu's address last night on this.
Right. Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran is taking steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working on what it calls the new plan to destroy Israel. You see, the old plan failed. Iran and its proxies tried to encircle Israel with a ring of fire and to attack us with the horrible attack of October 7th. But the people of Israel, the soldiers of Israel, rose like lions to defend our country. We crushed Hamas, we devastated Hezbollah, we hit Iranian proxies in Syria and Yemen. And when Iran directly attacked us twice last year, we struck back inside Iran itself. Yet in defending ourselves, we also defend others. We defend our Arab neighbors. They too have suffered from Iran's campaign of chaos and carnage. Our actions against Iran's proxy Hezbollah led to the establishment of a new government in Lebanon and the collapse of Assad's murderous regime in Syria. The peoples of those two countries now have a chance for a different future, a better future. So too do the brave people of Iran, and I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near. And when that happens, the great friendship between our two ancient peoples will flourish once again. I want to assure the civilized world, we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons. And Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make the nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear nightmare to the cities of Europe and eventually to America. Remember, Iran calls Israel the small Satan. It calls America the great Satan. And this is why for decades it's led millions in the chants of death to Israel and death to America. Today, Israel is responding to those genocidal calls with action and with a call of our own. Long live Israel and long live America. Our action will help make the world a much safer place. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in confronting Iran's nuclear weapons program. He has made clear time and again that Iran cannot have a nuclear enrichment program. Today, it is clear that Iran is just buying for time. It refuses to agree to this basic requirement of peaceful nations. That is why we have no choice but to act, and act now. The hardest decision any leader has to make is to thwart a danger before it is fully materialized. Nearly a century ago, facing the Nazis, a generation of leaders failed to act in time. They were paralyzed by the horrors of World War I. They were determined to avoid war at all costs. and they got the worst war ever.
There you go. Benjamin Netanyahu earlier, late yesterday on the attack. We'll comment on that and plus everything, all the different updates coming in as to what's going on, what the Pentagon thinks, what experts think, well, whoever's an expert on this, and I don't know who's an expert. I guess you could talk the military hardware being used, and as we've talked about, the actual infrastructure that Israel has to keep this going long term.
Sure, yeah.
That and a whole bunch more coming up. Plus, what a crazy day it was yesterday.
There's so much. It seems like this entire show really is going to be about all breaking news on many fronts here. We've got a lot going on. And more learned about the crash, the Air India crash. Also, the court actions that Newsom took against Trump, and
Ninth Circuit putting
the Ninth Circuit's response on that, and what that means, and what's going to happen next. There's so much going on.
And then the performative art from Senator Padilla.
Yeah,
we'll get to all that.
Clearly a show he wanted to put on.
We got a great show ahead. 866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Every driver knows the cost of replacing tires is a major expense. What if you could save on tire costs without sacrificing performance or safety? Consider retreads, a sustainable, cost-effective way to rack up your miles. The lower price tag of retreads might make it feel like you're sacrificing performance, but many of the quality retreads available today have proven to perform comparable to new tires. Plus, dependable tire performance also has to do with choosing the right retreads for your application and adopting a tire maintenance routine. Determining the position in which your retreads will be placed and what application they'll be used in should be the first steps you take when purchasing tires, whether new or retreads.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Coming up, finally, the bottom of the hour, we'll get into some of the specifics about the Israeli attack on Iran. But as we know, taking out military sites, taking out the nuclear enrichment program. There is the goal. This isn't going to be just one day attack, one night attack. They said this is going to continue. The other thing that I found interesting is they came right out and said, we targeted the nuclear scientist. You targeted the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. I just can't think of his name at the moment here. Salami. So they took him out. And it was interesting because, as they're firing all these missiles and whatever they're using for the attack, and I'm sure all that will come out here as to, what exact weaponry they've been using. We know the bunker buster missiles that they have been using in order to hit the I think it's the Natanz nuclear facility. But I was reading reports, I said, was it Mossad? Was Mossad inside of Iran, and did they assassinate these people?
Well, it's, if you think about the tactics that they have used against Hamas and Hezbollah, Israel is very sophisticated, again, when it comes to their intel. And they're also very sophisticated in carrying out plans of attack. So if you're going for the head of the monster, which would be Iran, who has funded Hamas and Hezbollah in those efforts against Israel, then you're gonna use every sophisticated measure that you have to the best that you can. So it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case.
Listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Friday Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Looking at a couple of the headlines out there. Israel launches attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. Israel hits the heart of Iran's nuclear program at the Natanz facility site. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, we played a statement a little while ago, confirmed that one of the top nuclear facilities had been hit in Thursday night's strike against the regime. Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9, he said. The Natanz nuclear facility, one of Iran's key nuclear sites, and which has been flagged by security experts that in coordination with the Fordo fuel enrichment plant could produce enough weapons-grade uranium to produce 11 nuclear weapons within a month, has been hit in the strikes, though the extent of the damage remains unknown. They've got a ton of mistakes here on writing this article here. Yeah, the Natanz nuclear facility was at least partially destroyed in 2020 following an explosion, and satellite imagery has suggested Iran began constructing deep underground tunnels to further secure and obscure their nuclear program, reported the Institute for Science and International Security earlier this year. It's unclear at this time if any of the underground structures were hit in the Thursday night strikes. You know, you and I talked about it, Marco Rubio saying we're not involved in this at all. The United States military satellites will be involved in assessing what the damage is. Well, I guarantee you when it comes to
I think we have a duty to do that. We have to watch Iran, as they are the enemy of the United States just as well as, the enemy of Israel. And you have to watch out for their next move, which inevitably is going to be attacking American interests in that region. It's likely, most believe, it's going to be Iraq. The IDF saying that it was at a press conference that Iran has launched over 100 drones toward Israel in recent hours. They didn't get very specific on that as to what to expect, but there's no doubt that the global intel community right now has to be on watch and using every bit of their intel to watch out for themselves, if nothing else. But certainly with the U.S., that is our strongest ally. In the Middle East, Israel is our strongest ally there. So I have no doubt that is the case. And sharing that intel is, in fact, critical on both fronts in protecting American interests and also with Israel protecting themselves and anticipating or being able to know exactly what you've done and anticipating what the ability of Iran is going to be in the coming days. As Benjamin Netanyahu was saying in that address, this is going to go on as long as it is necessary. So, again, this isn't a one-off deal. This is probably going to go on for quite some time. And the question is, what is the ability of either side of Iran after the attacks? What is the ability long-term, as you brought up, of Israel to sustain these kind of attacks against Iran? What do they have available to them? And that seems to be a big question mark. So we'll certainly find out in coming days. A lot of what was going on in social media in the last few hours as this story was breaking, there was a common thread in some of the posts in that, well, this is Israel drawing the U.S. in. How dare they draw us into their war? Because it's going to be known that the U.S., of course, had a hand in it. Iran is going to suspect that. Iran's going to suspect that anyway. If Israel acts, we're their strongest ally. They're our strongest ally in the Middle East. So they're going to suspect that. And,
of course,
whether they're drawing them in or not, you have to ask the question, or drawing us in or not, you have to ask the question. After October 7th, what is Israel to do?
Well, I saw this comment, and it was Katie Pavlich from Fox News that said, this is the worst take, and it was Senator Chris Murphy saying, see, Israel is going against what the United States and President Trump wants. President Trump wants a negotiated deal, and here Israel goes and cuts him off at the feet. And it's like, well, that's the worst take you could possibly have.
Well, even Elizabeth Warren saying, listen, I don't agree with Trump on everything, but I agree with him that diplomacy is the way here. And I'm thinking, okay, I know where you're going.
Yeah. Because this was, as we have said, this was the president knew about this. He knew this was going to happen. He was, Israel, I'm sure they had communications back and forth. We saw when they were talking about the voluntary what do you call it? That if you voluntary evacuation of American personnel over the last couple of days, so you knew something was going to happen. And he said, "Well, you don't know something could happen here. It's a very dangerous place." So he knew it. He hasn't come out and pounded on Netanyahu like he has on the past, which means by not doing that, he's in favor of doing this, and at the same time, he wants to keep his distance. So the United States, because if you look at this. We know that every time something like this happens, I think Trump has looked at this and said, we need to keep the public relations on our side. Yeah. We need to have such a great argument because he probably thinks that the world will respond better to everything that's been laid out over the last 48 hours. The world will respond better than Democrats do to riots in L.A.
Yeah, well.
But that's why, and you and I said this yesterday, we went, at the end of the show, we went, well, with the International Atomic Energy Commission, part of the UN, for the first time in 20 years, coming out and saying they're not doing this, and then boom, you and I looked at each other and went, wow, is this the approval? Will the attack happen now? Because boom, this came out from the UN that has never agreed with Israel.
Right.
And said exactly what we have said about Iran.
Right.
And exactly why we said what Biden was doing to ensure that they were funded was the wrong thing to do. Yeah. And it was pure idiocy, and every Democrat went along with it. But I think the public relations here with Trump is, we're dealing with it. Well, you look, they've got to defend themselves. We're not a part of this attack, and we wish to continue the negotiations while Israel pounds on Iran because the president tried it. And I have no problem. A lot of people get on the president's case saying he believes that everybody responds to economic incentives like in the Middle East. No, I think he realizes they don't. He's a business person. He has had a lot of countries respond to him on that. But to offer them the carrot and at the same time let them know that the stick is going to hit them if they don't accept the carrot is not a bad public relations philosophy to have with the rest of the world.
Well, it's for those who say, look, diplomacy at every turn, to the fullest extent possible, basically that's what you're doing, and you're vetting the entire situation. And how the other side responds is on the other side. Because if you've incentivized it the way that he has on many levels, it's not just with Iran. I think there was, the concern with Russia and everything that's, going on with that. There's no doubt there probably behind closed doors there were some incentives that were floated. And he's talked about, in fact, floated them publicly at times. We want to be able to do this. We want peace. We don't want war. And Russia can do trade again. They can, we can lift sanctions. And he talked about Iran yesterday and said, well, look, we don't want war. We want peace. We'll even trade with Iran. You're vetting the entire situation to the fullest extent possible. And that's never a bad thing. I mean, you're going to have to defend American interests, but ultimately, there's nothing wrong with doing that, knowing
that they're probably not going to accept it.
Knowing the strength, knowing your own strength.
Yeah.
And knowing that they know, more importantly, your strength. And that's it. The peace through strength thing is not a small deal. That's a very great approach because it allows you to do this. And you can go through and vet the entire situation And if the other side responds, they respond. If they don't, they know what's coming. And I think that's also, if you look at the statement by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, do not retaliate against the U.S. It's the very last line. That's not going to be tolerated.
That means a U.S. embassy in Israel.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That means any of our assets,
any interests
that we have in Israel or the Middle East.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And you're not going to do that. That's and by the way, we know Iranians are here on American soil. We know Iranians, the Iranians were plotting an assassination on Donald Trump.
Yep.
We know these things. So for them to have bad actors on American soil, I don't know what their ability would be or what they could pull off, but certainly they would love nothing more to attack on American soil.
Well, that came up last night. You saw it. I saw it on X, so it's hitting social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how many gotaways from Iran are here?
Right, exactly.
How many cells from Iran are actually here?
Right.
It does, though, give the president, because you can combine, the international story of the nuclear program in Iran and the attack from Israel, to, are we securing our borders and not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable?
Right.
And you can sell that to the American people right now.
Yes, you get that. I think it was important for Benjamin Netanyahu, obviously, had to make an address. I also think it's important for this administration to go through the steps they're going through, because ultimately, if this is going to be a greater scale, there's going to be further escalation here and greater involvement by the United States, then you're going to need the will of the American public. And right now, you have far too many on the left that are protesting their anti-Semitism, and showing their anti-Semitism and their support for Hamas, the enemy, which is funded by Iran, and they don't care. They don't care anything about it. But the average American, when you win this all day with the average American, when there is a direct threat on the U.S. coming from the enemy, and again, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully it doesn't escalate to that extent, and Israel's able to cripple them. But I suspect the will of the Iranians will never be defeated until the regime is completely annihilated. And I don't know how long that would take, or if it's even possible. I don't know.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Interesting article over here. Can Israel pull this off? And talking about it from a technical point of view. And we'll get to that coming up here. And basically saying there's a lot of unknowns.
Right,
And just gives the possibilities out there. So we will get to that. The whole thing, you and I were just talking about some of the stuff on social media yesterday and the back and forth about negotiations. Look, negotiations only happen if both sides want to negotiate.
Right, exactly.
There is no negotiation
right
if the one side really doesn't want to negotiate.
Right, exactly.
And if the one side doesn't care, any of your negotiating points, if they don't care about it, you can't negotiate.
Well, anybody who believes that Iran is not hell-bent on having nuclear weapons has their head in the sand. You're delusional. They're talking about it. They're promoting it. And I think every administration wants to walk through it and vet the entire diplomacy thing to the fullest extent. We'll see where it goes from here, because up till now, Trump hasn't been a wartime president. There have been strikes, though. We have to remind ourselves he's the one that took out Soleimani. So, the question would be, what involvement will there be? Well, I have no doubt he'll protect American interests. And the question is, all right, what does that include? Well, it starts with whatever Iran's going to do in terms of targeting American interests. And we don't know what that will be. Most believe that will be Iraq or American interests inside Israel.
Well, when it comes down to it, because this relates to the article we're going to be talking about, which is, do they have the technical expertise? Part of our self-interest is keeping Israel well armed.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not,
Yep.
that's in the national interest.
Sure.
So when you say our national interest, that can expand
Oh, yeah.
in many, many directions.
Yep.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. All right. Thanks for getting me this audio cut. You had it because you subscribed to the Free Press.
Yes.
And I thank you for it. This is Bari Weiss talking to Israeli Ambassador Mike Huckaby. And they get into, because you've seen this discussion now. It started to appear after it's been going on for a couple of weeks now. You and I have talked about, I don't know if we've talked much on the air about it, but the war going on between Mark Levin and Tucker Carlson on this whole thing. You saw the, what's her name? I can't think of her name. Oh, jeez. Oh, I just got mind blank here. She basically became an anti-Semite, in my opinion. I just can't think of her name. We used to like her. I got mind blank. But Candace Owen. Yeah. She just came out and, her statement on X, she's become a lunatic. She really has. And when it comes to Israel, her anti-Semitism just comes flying right through.
Yep.
Israel's the aggressor, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. But this is Mike Huckaby. And you and I talked about this because there seems to be all this discussion, the isolationists in the Trump administration. Well, Tucker Carlson really isn't in the Trump administration. Trump may listen to him.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I also heard that I don't know whether it's true, I saw a story where Mark Levin has the president's ear on this. But, now the worry is there going to be an uproar from the isolationists inside the Trump administration? Well, if you're an isolationist inside the Trump administration, you haven't been paying attention to Trump for a significant period of time.
Well, that's what I think so many are still getting wrong. And in recent hours, you see it. And they seem to be of the mindset that if you're going to be MAGA, you have to be an isolationist. The president is not an isolationist. And so
Soleimani proved that.
I think so many things in his first term did. Yeah.
He in that particular case, because remember, he was sending the planes were in the air.
Yeah.
And he called them back, and people were like, what's going on? And then took out Soleimani, and everything changed. It was like, why should we go to war if we can take out one of their leaders and send a better message?
Exactly.
That's not it may be a different kind of war tactic, but it's still war.
Is it something that Israel learned from and used in recent hours?
Yeah, well, they've used it before, though. They've taken out scientists before,
but I mean, if you think about at what level they struck in recent hours,
right,
and how many they took,
and how coordinated.
I mean, it was the entire. I mean, their top generals. How many are we up to now? 5 or 6 of their top military personnel gone.
Yeah, I haven't seen a number on that yet.
Yeah, I saw. I think it was 5. It's the last that I saw, and then they said other military leaders that were right below those.
Well, you're
ranks.
taking out as much as you possibly can to completely decimate it. You're taking out you're taking out the enrichment facilities.
Right.
You're taking out the scientists that are involved in it. You're taking out the military leadership. Right. That's your goal, to take out the military leadership there in Iran. So you just don't hit one thing. You just don't damage or destroy the enrichment facilities and keep the scientists there.
Right.
The goal would be at that point, take out the military leaders, because that's the warning. We'll take you out. We have the ability to take you out individually, and then you go after the scientists, so it takes way longer, because then you've got to start from scratch, which they will. Mm-hmm. They'll start again, but here is Mike Huckaby, Israeli Prime Minister, the ambassador,
yes.
The U.S. ambassador to Israel.
He is not the Prime Minister.
Mike Huckaby talking to Bari Weiss from the Free Press.
Do you think it's possible to strike a deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Well, I'm not sure that it would be, because for 46 years they've said the same thing. They wanted to kill Israel and annihilate it. Then they wanted to come and murder everybody in the United States. That's not a message they just came up with recently. They've said it for 46 years. They've said it without interruption. They say it every week. Israel is the appetizer. The U.S. is the entree. When I hear people in America say, no, we don't have anything to do with the whole Iranian-Israeli thing, that's no concern to us. Are they deaf, dumb, and blind? Are they not listening for 46 years to what the Ayatollahs have said? When somebody tells you over and over and over and over again they're going to kill you, it might be wise to pay attention to them and start believing them. And Iran has never said anything other than they want to get rid of the little Satan, then they want to come after the great Satan, which is the United States. So when people act like that isolationism is a legitimate doctrine of foreign policy, I would say to them, look, there's nobody more MAGA than me. In fact, to go back and listen to some of the things I said in my 2008 presidential campaign, I was MAGA before MAGA was cool. But here's the difference. Being America first shouldn't mean America only. We live in a very real world. Relationships that we have with other countries doesn't mean that we're going to fight their wars. It doesn't mean we're going to put our men and women in boots and send them to do their bidding. Israel has never, and a lot of Americans don't know this, they have never, not one time since the reconstitution in 1948, have they ever asked for or received American boots on the ground to fight their wars. They fight their own wars, and they do it pretty sacrificially. Every single 18-year-old male and female goes into the military, 3 years for the men, 2 years for the women. They serve in the reserves until their 40s, and even after their 40s, they may be recalled, as some of them have, back into the reserves, going into Gaza, going to the Lebanon border. Mm-hmm. These are people who defend themselves, and they've never asked us to fight their wars for them. So anyone who says that is either ignorant or they're not honest.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, again, also projecting that isolationist label onto President Trump.
Well, you and I looked at that, and we made the comparison because it's the one that's always shocked us a little bit, because the evidence doesn't show that he may negotiate differently, but we've never had any indication that he's an isolationist. No. We've wondered where he was going at times, and then it was like, okay, there was Soleimani. Soleimani proved he's not an isolationist. He just goes about it a different way than different presidents have done.
Right.
And in his negotiating stance, people say, well, it's ridiculous to offer Iran, that we will trade with them and hopefully we'll give them that carrot, and that carrot's going to send them. Well, no, I figured it wasn't going to work either. But if you're doing public relations with the world, what a great way to do it. You offer the carrot, but you've got the stick right there. I don't see anything wrong with the way that he has negotiated this. I talked about the sort of social media war going on between our colleague Mark Levin, he works for our company, and Tucker Carlson, and Mark, of course, is pro-Israel as you can get, and I agree with him on his stance. Tucker, for all the entertainment he's given me over the years, he lost credibility in 2020 with us. Right. When he said one thing to the public and one thing behind the scenes and never denied it. Yeah. When it came to the election being stolen and calling Trump every name in the book, and then boom, within a couple of weeks, has completely changed his mind. And then the whole malevolent being thing with the UFOs, that these are evil spirits. That at that point he became a nut job, in my opinion. I'm not saying he doesn't make good points at times. Everybody makes good points at times, but for me, Tucker has turned out to be a nut job.
Yeah, it seemed to be that on social media there were those two factions, but I don't know how big the actual isolationist movement is.
I don't think it is. I think it's a loud part. Of it, but
it seems to be loud, but not as big.
But it certainly isn't the populist portion of the electorate that has gone for Trump.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but they've been loud. They're more loud on social media or maybe in their podcast, but it doesn't, in my opinion, encompass. They may have it on their podcast or interviews, whatever, but it never seems to break out.
Yeah, right. It doesn't catch fire.
It doesn't
the way
catch
other
fire.
things have.
Right. It doesn't catch fire with I think the significant portion of Trump supporters out there.
Right.
But you and I were both laughing. It was like, Mike Huckaby, I was MAGA before there was a MAGA.
So I was MAGA before MAGA was cool.
Trying to virtue signal as far as you can get. But you and I both said, wow, that's the most aggressive we have heard. Well, we have heard Mike Huckaby the most passionate, the most direct in a long time. Because at times we always thought he came across as being, well, this and the, more wishy-washy on things.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, I support the efforts of Bari Weiss, because I do believe she, through the Free Press, her news organization, is trying to get to the truth. Again, there may be writers that she has on staff, or maybe even herself at times, that I don't agree with on certain things, but I think she does a good job at bringing certain things around, and I think that was a good interview with Ambassador Huckaby. It was refreshing to see him have that strength in that position. He didn't seem soft at all. I mean, it was very clear.
Well, when we talk about, I spaced out the comparison I was trying to make. The part of Trump's support that believes he was an isolationist. And especially going into the second term after what he did in the first term, I have no idea. To me, it's almost as if it's as confusing as when, or maybe it's just hope on their part that he will be that way. But when it sort of I know both you and I, of the passion of the Ron Paul supporters, where we couldn't believe it because they were like, no, we love Ron Paul because he's against free trade, because he doesn't like NAFTA. And we went, what are you talking about? You don't even know. And we would get, this went on, by the way, for years on our show.
Oh, yeah.
And we would say it, and people would get angry at us. We go, no, Ron Paul doesn't want any trade agreements. He doesn't want.
He wants total free trade.
He wants total
unmanaged free trade.
Right. They had it wrong. They thought because he was against NAFTA that he was against free trade. No, he had the opposite opinion. He thinks there should be no NAFTA, no trade agreements, nothing. That everybody should be able to trade with whoever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. And when we told us, people got upset, and we said, he says it all the time.
Yeah.
And we were just so baffled as to the most passionate Ron Paul supporters that had no idea what his opinion was on trade. And it's not to that degree with Trump with the isolationist yet, but still with social media and knowing the history of what Trump did, and especially taking out Soleimani when he did that.
Yeah.
That's not an isolationist move at all.
Here's a quote from Ron Paul. I consider myself the strongest advocate of free trade. I don't want any tariffs, and I don't want any barriers. I want to really trade.
Yeah.
But I just don't like the international government organizations because that becomes managed trade for the benefit of some companies. So I'm not much into, nor do I support WTO, the World Trade Organization, and NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and all those agreements, because those are only tools for when you're being undermined. You go there to get your tariffs put on, and you try to get fair trade, so to speak, but that's managed trade. That's a quote from Ron Paul.
Yeah, and we'd said that, and for years we got flack on it. We went, go to his website. We played audio
He had
cuts
it
of
on his campaign website.
Exactly. It was like, and we would get into fights with Ron Paul. I'm a Ron Paul supporter. Why are you guys lying about him? We're not lying about him.
Yeah, right.
You got to pay attention to what he actually says.
Right.
And what he says, what he does, what he didn't, how he voted.
And I think, too, it's for a lot of people who do support President Trump, but call him an isolationist, it may be that wishful thinking. They want to label him, even if he won't label himself. But the thing is, you have to look at his actions. Soleimani is the defining moment. I mean, you could go back earlier. You could go back in spring of 2017, carrying out the attack on ISIS in Afghanistan, in eastern Afghanistan, using the Moab. You know, this is not. He's not a wartime president in that. He's not. He would rather not send troops into harm's way without vetting everything first. But if this thing with Iran escalates to everyone's greatest fears, the U.S. will eventually be involved. There's no way you won't be.
You can make the case he's not a nation builder like we've had in the past.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you're an isolationist.
Yeah, exactly.
866-90 Red-Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Owner-operator Mike Nichols is leased to Wayne Transports, pulling in their dry bulk division today after decades in business for himself. Speaking to Overdrive's Todd Dills recently, Nichols offered a word of advice to any company driver planning to make the switch to running as an owner-operator. Unless you've got access to family money or otherwise independently wealthy, he noted.
As a company driver, you need to be thinking about startup capital and down payment. And I would just say that you need to treat that like you would firewood. Save what you think you might need and then triple it, if not quadruple it. And you'll be thankful that you did.
You'll be glad you did. That is, not just given favorable loan terms with a good down payment. Inevitably with trucking, you'll get hit with a breakdown and huge repair bill, or another of those unforeseen events. You'll need that reserve cash to cover it and avoid taking on debt or going out of business. Hear more from Overdrive's 2024 Trucker of the Year contenders at overdriveonline.com/PIB.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we'll get to more of that article that I saw yesterday. Can Israel pull it off? And they talk about, do they have what they need in order to win a long-term war? And there's some questions that are being asked. I'm assuming because what I've seen over the last month or so, and what I've seen with the president over the last couple of days, that Israel has our full support.
Yeah.
So I have and they will have the full support of Congress. Expect Congress to say something here and come out with a statement. The Republicans, I would expect that here in the next day or two, so we'll get to that.
Yeah, because you and I had a couple of liberal media articles yesterday. One was NBC, the other was CBS, and they were making the points within those articles that they would do so, if Israel moves, they'll do so without the support of the U.S. Well, depends on how you define support.
Right.
Right? And we talked about that yesterday. But I think it's clear. And by the way, the administration should be, especially with intel, we should know what Iran is doing.
Plus, Senator Padilla and his theatrics.
Wow. Yeah.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, just an article I saw in National Review. Can Israel pull this thing off? And it says, for many years, it's been an open question whether Israel would have the capability on its own without the help or assistance of the United States to neutralize the Iranian nuclear program. The questions were technical in nature. Does Israel possess the kind of advanced bunker-busting munitions designed to penetrate prepared and hardened facilities built precisely to protect themselves from air-delivered munitions? Does Israel possess the logistical capabilities, including aerial refueling assets, to facilitate long-range strikes on Iran? It's just under 1,000 miles from Jerusalem to Tehran. The latter question, for all intents and purposes, has been answered over the last 2 years as Israel has repeatedly conducted strikes on the Iranian capital and on military bases around the country. The question of munitions is still, in my view, unanswered definitively because we don't yet know that Israel has achieved decisive effects on its targets. We will learn more in the coming days and weeks. We should remember that air campaigns, even very intensive ones, do not always achieve their desired results, which is true. But we know that Israel has obtained significant quantities of the bunker-busting JDAMs. Last October, the U.S. Naval Institute's Proceedings magazine took a look at the eyebrow-raising fact that Israel dropped bunker busters in the strike that killed former Hezbollah leader Nasrallah. What they talked about was, for example, 2 factors in the Israeli strike stand out. The first is quantity. According to the U.S. Air Force Central Command report on the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the United States forces expended a total of 24 bunker busters in the entire conflict with the Iraqi military.
Wow.
In the strike against Nasrallah, Israel dropped 3 times as many in one night. Considering the targets, however, that help explains the overkill. To be clear, the type of bunker busters are not the types that Israel have are not the very best bunker busters on planet Earth.
Okay.
There are more advanced varieties, and it's hard to say whether Israel has acquired or independently developed these types. It's important to understand that the Iranian nuclear enrichment facility in Fordow, which they went after, he said.
Right, yeah.
Netanyahu said, which is buried very deep underground and well protected, will likely require the world's best bunker busters to destroy it after the breathtaking, will likely require the world's best bunker busters. After the breathtaking operations against Hezbollah and Iran since October 7th, no one should underestimate our Israeli friends. That, of course, is not the same thing as saying that the Israelis have all the military capabilities that the United States has. They don't. But the very fact that Israel made this move without our help, attacking dozens of targets, according to CNN reports around Iran, in what Israeli officials are saying will not be a one-day attack, leads me to think that the Israeli government came to the conclusion that they believed they simply had to make this move. they likely were in possession of credible intelligence that Iran was attempting to break out towards an operational nuclear weapon that would have been a threat to Jerusalem. It's possible that Israel is launching these strikes despite the fact that the Israelis don't have the munitions they want or need because they feel like they must strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting here. You were wondering, you and I wondering what does Mossad know? What kind of intel does Israel have? It's generally speaking, it's always been superior because of, again, the necessity for it to be accurate. But this is from the Wall Street Journal in one of their updates here a little while ago. Israel's spy agency, Mossad, was conducting operations inside Iran, including hunting for leadership targets in Tehran. A person familiar with the operation said Friday. I don't want to, it's not to lash out at the Wall Street Journal here, but I think that's a well-done statement. I think that's a given that that Mossad was operating. The question, I guess, that you and I had was to what extent can they keep operating given the strikes against Iran? Saudi Arabia, a short time ago, issued a statement. Saudi Arabia, early Friday, this is from Fox News, issued a scathing attack on Israel, condemning the Jewish state for its early morning strike on Iran. Saudi Arabia expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of the blatant Israeli aggressions against the brotherly Islamic Republic of Iran. And that's a quote from Saudi officials in a statement. I think that's obligatory. I think, not that they don't mean it, but we're in that with the summit that the president had in the Middle East that included, in fact, really kind of highlighted Saudi Arabia, and included also a business summit within that visit to the Middle East, and not a visit to Israel at that time. I think, the Saudis have to take the road they've always taken. You got to come out. It's obligatory in nature. You got to come out and condemn Israel, right? It's an act of war. You got to do that. And again, not that they don't mean it, but also there's that balance you're going to play because you really don't want to, again, take on the U.S. long term. But right now, you're good with making a statement like this.
Well,
you do it, you issue the statement, you shake your fist, and then you go back to sleep because the fact of the matter is that everybody's waiting for these 100 drones. It's said, by the way, that the Israelis used 200 fighter jets in this attack. 100 drones have been launched by Iran, and some sources saying more than 100, slightly over 100. They don't know. We haven't heard any update on that as to, we know Israel is working to intercept those drones, but we don't know what success they've had or what the timeline would be, what the expectations are on that particular part of this entire mission.
I find it really interesting. I mean, because Saudi Arabia is talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
How many interviews has the Crown Prince done where he has said Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon?
Right.
And because if they get it, then we have to get it. So they don't want Iran to get the nuclear weapon. So, I mean, that's the kind of situation you're dealing with where, you talk out of both sides of your mouth. But,
and part of it is CYA in that you don't want to come off as somebody who's working with Western interests or Israel in any way. And if the Saudis believe that the Iranians see the Saudis working more and more in favor of Israel and the U.S. and less in favor with the Iranians, then they could be the target of an attack. Of course, there has to be that fear with the Saudis, no doubt. So I think it covers. You're trying to basically cover your bases, as you mentioned. You pretty much have to talk out of all sides of your mouth here if you're the Saudis. Both sides of your mouth.
Reading here from the Wall Street Journal, the latest article, the attacks went well beyond Iran's uranium enrichment facilities and other sites to include decision makers who might direct retaliatory attacks on Israel and those who help prop up the country's theocratic rulers. Israel said the attacks targeted Iran's nuclear and military sites, as well as Iranian military commanders and nuclear scientists. Planes carried out the initial attack before dawn Friday, followed by another 4 waves of strikes. Israel's spy agency Mossad was conducting operations inside Iran, including hunting for leadership targets in Tehran. A person familiar with the operation said on Friday. Iranian state media said that their commander, Hossein Soleimani, a top military officer, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, Major General Golani Rashid were among those killed, punching a deep hole in Iran's military leadership. Salami was killed in a dawn strike on the Guards Command headquarters. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientist working on the uranium bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. So I'd seen earlier, and it wasn't in the Wall Street Journal, another article that was talking about that the Mossad, was conducting operations inside there. And I was my first, and they didn't get as specific as the Wall Street Journal, where the Wall Street Journal says, no, Mossad is in there targeting, which means looking to assassinate military leaders inside. So this thing was, multi-pronged, and probably they've been planning this for a while.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've done the war games on this. This is something. They knew they were going to have to do this. They knew, so probably this is something that has been well planned over a period of probably a couple of years.
Well, because not only do you have to know where the sites are, you have to know where the leaders are going to be at all times. Then you have to know what the plan of action, what the protocol is in the event that you strike them. What is Iran's protocol for a response? You have to have all this information, and it has to be good information, up-to-date information. So I'm with you. It's probably been going on for a while, but if you talk about one of the missile sites that they targeted and took out the tunnels going in to that missile site, that keeps personnel from reaching that site and being able to retaliate. They were still able to, according to Israel, Iran was able to get off 100 drones. Again, we don't know. We don't have an update on that, but Israel's looking to intercept those drones. And the question would be, if it's just the drone, I don't want to say just the drones because that can do a lot of damage. But if it's drones and there haven't been a great deal of missiles since taking out any missile sites or any access to missile sites, how bad is the damage? How much have they crippled their ability? I think that's what pretty much everybody's waiting to assess. And I guess we'll know based on what the response is from Iran. We did see missiles going in. There were videos coming out. This goes back a couple of hours ago, but there were missiles that were being shot into Israel from Iran. The question is, what is their ability now after this strike by Israel? I really would like to see also what the discussion is going to be here stateside on Friday. Because the words they're using at Axios, aside from why it matters, is the U.S. will not have any direct support of Israel. Direct support. So don't know if that's the way that Axios is writing it or if that's the, pivot that the administration is making, because eventually it will come out.
Yeah.
So politically, you're going to have to, shed some light on it before it hits the media so you can control the messaging in that. And again, what you're trying to do politically is you're trying to maintain public support in the event that the U.S. has to take action against Iran in defense of any American interest. That's how all this is done.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the top of the hour, the theater performance of Senator Padilla of California yesterday. I mean, obviously, we all knew what he was trying to do. He wanted what happened. He wanted that to happen. He wanted to be forcibly removed. Mm-hmm. He wanted the confrontation to happen, and it's typical of Democrats that they create the situation, they create a security problem, and then they cry that they're a victim.
Yeah. Well, it's Newsom the other day. Well, they should just come and arrest me. All right, tough guy. Yeah. You'd left nothing more. Who was it that made the point? That would do nothing but help his, I would say, struggling effort to run for president.
Yeah, I forgot who said that.
Yeah, was it Brit Hume?
No, it wasn't Brit Hume. It was somebody
else.
But
it is their only play. Let me be the victim here by being thrown out.
And they couldn't even win from the liberal media that was there.
No, they couldn't.
Said, well, no, nobody knew who he was.
Right. He didn't announce himself.
Until, and you see, you see where they're trying to take him out, and he's pushing back.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm assuming that's Secret Service.
I think they were federal. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know to what agency.
None of us could get away with that.
No.
Ever.
No.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. How are the markets responding to Israel and their attack on Iran last night? The Dow futures down 545, S&P down 83, NASDAQ down 336, roughly between 1.3% and 1.5% to round it off.
Yeah, and since the beginning of our show, the last couple hours, hasn't really moved much. Oil jumping as high as 73 and change per barrel earlier. Down now at 72.04, up $4, which is up nearly 6% for oil, which is to be expected if there's going to be, again, a longer war. I guess that's what everybody, including the market, is waiting to see, how long this might go on. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, saying in his statement, in his address, basically to the world, that this will go on as long as necessary to eliminate this threat. And so I guess the market, the world, everybody's waiting to see how long that would be.
Meanwhile, yesterday it got interesting. Social media was all abuzz when Senator Padilla of California wanted to crash the party of the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Noem's news conference. Here's part of it here. Here we go.
Secretary, I want to know why you insist so I want to say thank you to every single person that has been able to do this.
Hands up, hands up.
Also, I want to talk
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary. Because the fact of the matter is, a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your...
I also want to talk about specifically...
Ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you don't my hands, go ahead. Put them behind my back.
All right. Cool. Hands in hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Who the hell do these people think they are?
Again, trying to be the hero, putting on a show here for everybody. And you had Kristi Noem later appeared on Fox News and said, we actually, after this exchange, we actually sat down.
Yeah. Let's have the audio here if we can,
we need
please.
the audio up here.
What I would say is we were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me and elevating his voice, and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the room. So as soon as he identified himself, appropriate actions were taken. But I would say that, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time. And that this, we're leaders, we're public servants. And if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here. So we sat down, had a conversation. We probably disagree on 90% of the topics, but we agreed to exchange phone numbers. We'll continue to talk and share information, and I think that's the way it should be in this country.
Yeah, she just ignored him. She just kept on talking.
Yep.
Which was fascinating to watch. I want to get to some of the actual because I've got a ton of different audio here from. Let me just see here. You've got. Okay, first off, let me make sure this is the right one. Let me just make sure. No, this is the wrong one here. Stephen A. Smith commented on it. I wanted to get to his first, but here we go. This was on CNN, and this is CNN's Stephanie Elam talking to Jake Tapper about Padilla. Here we go.
And that's the other key point. He started talking first, and when he started talking, he took a couple of steps. It was not a lunge, as it's been characterized, and then there were immediately hands on him from her detail, people pushing him away and back and moving him away from them. During that time is when he identified himself. So he did not identify himself first when he was asking the question and interrupting her. And those are two things I think are very important to note how this.
And of course they are. They didn't know. And the fact is, if that's me, and the security comes up, and this is the Department of Homeland Security, and they say you need to back up, you back up. He's pushing forward.
Yeah, he keeps going forward. Yeah.
He's pushing against them.
Right.
He's resisting what law enforcement is telling him to do at that moment.
Right.
And until they got to the back of the room, he didn't identify himself until they got to the back of the room.
Right.
And I think what Kristi Noem saw is when he's lunging and pushing at the guards.
Right.
But he's standing off by the side, and they go she's talking. And they said, you need to move back, and stop doing this. And then he starts pushing forward, and they start pushing him back.
Right.
Let's get to, this is, let me see, this is CBS News. Carter Evans was in the room, and here we go. Here's what she had to say. All right.
I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Carter Evans, who was in the press conference when Padilla was escorted out. Carter, you took some video as it was unfolding. Let's talk about how this all played out.
I would say it was a big surprise for everyone. I was actually shooting some video of the DHS secretary while she was speaking. I was going to post it on social media when I heard someone approaching from the right side of the room, and that's when I panned the camera over there. Now, I did not recognize the senator immediately either. This all happened very, very quickly. The DHS secretary did not skip a beat. She just kept looking straight ahead, kept delivering her message as he was dragged out of the room trying to ask his questions. It was only then, after he was being dragged out of the room, that he identified himself.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then Jonathan Turley writes on it, Senator Padilla gave a statement that he merely had a question and began to ask a question and was immediately forced out of the room and handcuffed. That's not what we just all watched on live television. Padilla was yelling at Noem and then resisted security, trying to get him to move outside of the room. Padilla's account is not just revisionist, but almost delusional. He was pushing back on security while yelling at the secretary. When he moved toward the secretary, security stopped him. They had no idea who he was. How is this a model for congressional conduct? To lionize Padilla for this performative and disruptive act is baffling for anyone who actually watched the scene unfold.
Yeah, this is performance art that the left believes is going to get them the headlines.
Andrew McCarthy writes, let's do some legal analysis. To begin with, people are on edge. There have been violent attacks on ICE personnel who work at Secretary Noem's direction. So it was reasonable for agents providing security at a Noem press availability in Southern California, ground zero of the mayhem, to worry about the potential that she could be forcibly attacked, right?
Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
Nor should we forget that there have been 2 assassination attempts on now President Trump in the last year, both before the election. The media Democrat complex is promoting the storyline that Trump is an authoritarian who is bent on destroying American democracy. Obviously, nothing could please them more than executive branch agents getting rough with the Democratic senator, especially after a Democratic mayor was arrested in Newark a few weeks ago after a physical altercation with immigration agents. A Democratic congresswoman has now been indicted in connection with the same incident, and California's Democratic governor has seemed to be pleading to be arrested this week as he positions himself for a 2028 White House run by assuming the mantle of Trump's arch nemesis. Nevertheless, it's not Trump or Noem who forcibly restrained Senator Padilla, wrestled him to the floor, and cuffed him. It was federal law enforcement agents who were functioning as a security detail. I have no idea what security precautions were taken in connection with her appearance. Were people required to pass through security or present identification before getting access to the room? I do know that the videos thus far available provide scant reason to believe the agents knew Padilla was a U.S. senator. The fact that in the heat of the moment he announced himself as a senator is not relevant. Security agents never take such proclamations at face value and would not do so here under the circumstances in which Padilla sure was not acting like a senator. In a fraught atmosphere, the agents had to make a snap decision about whether Padilla might be rushing the podium to do harm. He did not stand down when they directed him to do so. That's the part where he was pushing back against them.
Right.
You and I would be in jail, by the way.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Naturally, they reacted by treating him as a threat. You can say that they were too heavy-handed. Imagine the reaction, though, if they had given him more leeway and he turned out not to be a U.S. senator and he hurt somebody. Instead of heavy-handed, we'd be asking how the hell the agents would have let an assailant get so close to a top official that they were supposed to be protecting. Given that Padilla was neither harmed nor charged with the crime once things got sorted out, and that he ended up getting a private meeting with Noem afterwards, I'm not going to criticize the agents. They're just trying to protect a government official, the antithesis of undermining democratic governance.
Right.
Padilla's claim that he was doing oversight is absolutely absurd. Members of Congress, including senators, do not carry the legislature around with them wherever they go. Oversight is done on Capitol Hill.
Yep.
Unless a committee or congressional leadership has commissioned a fact-finding field trip. And when Congress wants to do such a field trip to a federal office building, they have to coordinate with the executive agencies in charge of that facility. Padilla was not conducting oversight. He was crashing a speech by an executive branch official. He knew members of the press would be present and were apt to be sympathetic to the Democratic sanctuary policies. He was trying to disrupt the event, embarrass Noem, and draw attention to himself. Regardless of what he claims, Padilla was not formally functioning as a member of Congress. Hence, he was subject to the same restrictions that would be imposed on any other citizen. No one would have been permitted by the agents to disrupt Noem's speech or rush the podium. Anyone else would have been forcibly escorted from the room, detained at least temporarily, and potentially charged with assault, depending on how serious the physical actions were. Indeed, we can safely assume that as a member of the privileged political class, Padilla was treated better than the average rabble-rouser would have been once his identity was confirmed.
Well, yeah, and I think, as they mentioned here, but it bears repeating, getting a sit-down, a meeting with Kristi Noem after all of that behavior tells you exactly what kind of privilege the guy has. That wouldn't have happened for the average person. And, it's, again, this showboating, I want to look like the victim. Keep in mind, too, that Democrats, other Democrats, not necessarily Padilla, but other Democrats have positioned the Trump administration sending National Guards out to attack you. Jayapal said it.
Yeah.
So there has to be a heightened concern in any situation like that where you have the Secretary of Homeland Security and someone barges in without announcing themselves. And again, not the place for oversight, not for Padilla, not for Maxine Waters, not for any of them. You don't do that in the field. And again, if you're looking at a fact-finding outing, then you coordinate that. But the oversight itself, the work, is done on Capitol Hill. But see, you can't do the performance art on Capitol Hill. I mean, they try.
Well, there was some yesterday.
Yeah, a little bit, maybe. But this is the kind that gets you all of the headlines. Well, quite frankly, you look like a moron. You look like you don't know what your job is. But they don't care. They only care. All of this is to elevate their own profile. All of it. This is who the left has become. I'm going to elevate my profile by barging in here on Kristi Noem. They're not going to arrest me. It'll make it look like I'm the victim. That's what they're trying to do at every turn.
He's not a victim.
He's not a victim.
He's a performance. He's trying to be a performance artist.
Yes.
I don't think he convinced anyone, though.
I don't think so.
Except the already converted insane.
Mm-hmm.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So you say that the Gaza hospital management has condemned Israel?
Yeah, the what do they call them?
The Gaza baby feeding.
The Gaza Health Ministry.
Yes.
And Hamas, according to the AP, the Associated Press, a little while ago, Hamas condemns Israel's strikes on Iran. You don't say. What took them so long?
The Hamas baby milk factory.
Right, yes.
Right. Remember that during the first Iraq war?
Yeah.
And they had baby milk factory on the back of their... I'll never forget that. Scott Jennings is in Israel. That's where he is.
Yeah.
That's where he said a quick update just 20 minutes ago. Not much has happened since my last update. Skies are quiet. We are waiting to see if Iranian drones actually reach Israel. Don't think I'm getting out of Israel today, but will continue to report on what I see and what I hear. So
Jordan has intercepted drones and missiles, saying basically protecting their own airspace here. Don't have all of the details in front of me. I don't know how much of the details that Jordan has, the Jordanian state media has put out, but from the Associated Press, this goes back about 15 minutes ago. Jordanian state media said the country's Air Force is intercepting missiles and drones in its airspace. The state news agency quoted an unnamed, I'm sorry, this is updating on the fly here, so it moved my page, but it was an unnamed source, basically. And that would be, I think, expected. An unnamed senior military official, as I get my footing back here on this. By the way, we're working off of our computers because things are changing. So printing anything off becomes old almost immediately. As saying that the interceptions were carried out based on military assessments indicating that the missiles and drones were likely to fall within Jordanian territory, including populated areas posing a potential threat to civilian safety. The official added that the Jordan armed forces are operating, quote, around the clock to defend the country's borders by land, sea, and air, and will not allow any violation of Jordanian airspace under any circumstances, end quote. So there you have that. You're getting your response basically depending on who's responding. You're getting what you would pretty much expect here. The question is that everybody has is how long will this go? As the Prime Minister Netanyahu said in his address, that it will go on as long as it takes to eliminate the threat. We don't know how long that is. So the markets and world leaders and pretty much every world citizen is waiting to find out how long that will be, and also what the next action will be. Will those drones from Iran reach targets in Israel? We're going to follow this, of course, throughout the morning.
Listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for being here. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. All right, so, of course, when there's like an exciting sporting event, almost like a sporting event, Padilla, at the Noem press conference, we must hear from Stephen A. Smith.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, what's the score?
What do you have to say? Here we go.
Here you have this Senator, Alex Padilla. Can Kristi Noem speak? Could you have waited till she finished to ask your questions? To shout your questions? You are a senator, right? You couldn't wait? So that was just you out of control because you were just losing it, huh? You, a United States Senator, couldn't compose yourself and let the head of Homeland Security finish her thoughts before you asked the question. Couldn't do that, huh?
And I do like Stephen A. Smith telling somebody else to compose themselves.
Shouting at them, yeah. I love
it. No, but he's
right.
He's right.
He's right.
And then CNN brought their legal expert in to discuss what happened, and he hits it right in the button. Here we go.
This is a federal building. You can't just, wander in there necessarily. What reporting do you have, and how should we, in your view, be analyzing how we're seeing these agents respond?
Well, it's easy to think about this as one incident, but actually from a law enforcement perspective, we're really looking at three separate incidents that happened within a short period of time. First, you have the DHS secretary who is addressing the press. This was not a Q&A period, and she's interrupted. She's interrupted by someone who is speaking very loudly, and so her security detail confronts what we obviously now know to be the senator, and at that point, he is now going to be escorted out. You can't interrupt something like that that's already in progress without having those consequences. But the second incident, in my view, happens the moment as officers are trying to lead him out, he then turns and walks back towards kind of into those agents. At that point, from a security detail perspective, we're taking this person out against their will. We've asked the person, and again, this is all happening very quickly, but the moment he then turns into them, they realize this is not someone who is going to comply.
Duh.
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson was talking about it yesterday also. Here we go.
Continue doing that.
Mr. Speaker, did federal agents go too far the way they treated Senator Padilla today? Was that a bridge too far?
I saw the same video, a very brief video that I think many people did. I think the senator's actions, my view is it was wildly inappropriate. You don't charge a sitting cabinet secretary, and everybody can draw their own conclusions. You can see it's a heated debate here.
People heckling you here, Mr. Speaker?
I'm not going to respond to that. Look, let me just, hold on, wait just a second. I think the American people can draw their own conclusions. They saw a senator acting like wildly inappropriate. I'll leave it at that.
But what about the way he was treated by those agents?
What I saw was agents asking him to quieten down so that the secretary could continue her press conference. He refused to do so. What were they supposed to do? They have to restrain someone who is engaging in that kind of behavior. They moved him out of the room.
Throw him to the ground, handcuff him.
A sitting member of Congress should not act like that. It is beneath a member of Congress. It is beneath a U.S. senator. They're supposed to lead by example.
And as every person in the media said, nobody knew who he was.
Right.
And Andrew McCarthy makes the greatest point. Doesn't matter. Once he starts physically pushing back in an attempt to get back to the stage, at that point he's out of control. It doesn't matter what he says. Once the physical altercation happens that he initiated.
Yeah.
Because they're escorting him out. You've got to get out. And he turns around, starts pushing back. At that point, anything he says means nothing. The whole point is once a United States senator started an assault against those agents, it was a physical confrontation. You're going to be pulled out of that room and you're going to be put to the floor and you're going to be cuffed, and then they're going to find out who you are. You cannot wait to that point and then start screaming that you're a United States senator when you initiate the physical altercation.
He wanted the chaos.
He did.
That's what he wanted, and he got it. To the extent that the stupid question was asked, was that a bridge too far, and how they handled it? No. The question is, was it a bridge too far, and how he handled it in the first place? His approach went too far because he wanted it to, because he wanted the headlines. And he wanted the guys on Red Eye talking about it at 2:40 in the morning.
Let's hear more from CNN and the analysis that they had on it yesterday.
Being treated quite that way.
We just received a statement from the office of Senator Padilla, and they say that he's currently in Los Angeles exercising his duty to perform congressional oversight of the federal government's operations in Los Angeles across California. It goes on to say that he tried to ask the secretary a question and was forcibly removed by federal agents, forced to the ground, and handcuffed. He is not currently detained, and we are working to get additional information. David, over and over, we've heard from voters in different parts of the country talking about how they want to see Democrats confront the administration on some of these issues like immigration. I mean, it gets handsy, but Padilla was trying to make a statement there.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, she was holding a press conference and doing a press statement. He's not a member of the press. It wasn't like a hearing where it was an open forum for senators to ask a question. He clearly showed up to a public event to create a moment and do what you're saying, sort of show his constituents, not just Democrats, but that he's fighting from his perspective. Again, I think the question is, was this the appropriate response of how it got dealt with in that moment and how that plays? To your point, though, I mean, what we're seeing politically is a very divided country over the support and opposition. It's almost evenly divided in a Washington Post poll today over the president's actions and policies here, both over the president putting in the Guard and the Marines there, right? But also we see an evenly divided country over support and opposition to the protests to ICE's action.
You might. Let me see, what are they trying to see? Have you noticed the polls? Just the favorability rating of the president.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a 15, 16-point difference between the polls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody is doing bogus polls out there.
Right.
By the way, just so people know.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's but in fact, was it Rasmussen reports yesterday? I think they posted something. I got to go back and see if that was the poll I was looking at, but they were talking about how the J.D. Vance and his approval numbers are actually right up there close to President Trump's. I'll go and find that story. But, yeah, and again, we've talked about methodology over the years. It's no secret. You can skew the answers by the kinds of the wording in the questions and the qualifiers. You set the tone or the premise with the question, and then the respondents are going to act, accordingly.
There was a pivot in the White House yesterday, though, when the president came out and he put it on Truth Social. I read it. I had to read it like twice, going, "What?"
Yeah,
I wasn't sure where it was going. He was, and he actually talked about it, where he said, people that have been here for 20, 25 years and we're great, and the owner of the farm loves them, and you're supposed to throw them out. We can't do that to our farmers, and leisure to our hotels. We have to use common sense on that. That's not the message Stephen Miller has been putting out.
Right.
It's everyone goes if you're here illegally. And now, for the first time, the president has backtracked on that message. Here he is answering the question after everybody had seen the Truth Social post.
What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers and leisure, too, hotels.
That's a huge change.
Yeah.
Because that's the first time this administration has said there are exceptions if you're illegal in this country.
Well, the question is, where's that pressure coming from then on the pivot?
Well, the reason I bring this up is Stephen Miller's been out there. Nope, everybody goes. You've had some of his surrogates. I can't think of the woman that was a Democrat, Sargon. I can't think of her. She was out there yesterday. She's been on Fox News. She's been on CNN. And she's saying, no, everybody goes. Everybody goes. If you're not here, you go. You go. Sorry, you're here illegally. Finally, the president she's been all over the place. I just can't think of her name at the moment. Just the last name, Sargon. She's been out there, and she's like, we have to get rid of every single illegal immigrant because they take a job from a blue-collar American. And that was her point. And she's been all over the place the last 10 days. And then the president came out and said that yesterday. I went, whoa, there's a shift.
Right.
Unless they're seeing that the polling's saying, because by him saying that, there are exceptions, people that have been here a very, very long time. Well, then what's the cutoff point legally?
Well,
if you're saying, because there's a legal question here, how will the courts view it if you're deporting some people but not others?
Right.
Based on an executive order and the time that they've been in this country, how is it? How
are you saying you're enforcing the law or not?
Yeah.
And the law applies to all. Nobody is above the law. So you're picking and choosing. And then again, my question, where's the pressure coming from?
And with everything else that happened yesterday, there really wasn't any response. You didn't see any response. But then again, Stephen Miller's not going to respond to that. That's his boss.
Right.
Who's saying it. But all the surrogates for him, the only thing is, after he talked about that, there was so much going on. The Padilla thing happened, and then Israeli attack on Iran, and so that sort of got lost. But I woke up to the True Social post yesterday, and I was like, "You need to wipe off your reading glasses. You're reading this wrong." And I went, "Whoa, wow."
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing I went, "What are the legal problems that's going to then start?" If you're saying, because he said, "I'm going to do something about it, put on an executive order," you're going to put on an executive order saying that some illegal immigrants can stay and some can't. How will the courts look at that?
And how will you know? How will enforcement be able to differentiate between the two?
Right. And can an executive order do that, or can only Congress do that?
Well, because if we're going to say, if you're essentially through the executive order changing the law, because that's what it comes down to. What does the law say? You have the authority to enforce the law, but now you're saying you don't want to enforce the law for some.
Yeah, should this president, is it a smart move for this president to put out an executive order saying we're not going to follow immigration law?
Right.
This president?
Because then you set a precedent in the courts for them to come back at you and say, well, hold on, you're claiming you have the authority to do this, but you don't have the will to do this over here.
Well, your base also politically. Look at that. There's the legal implications, there's the political implications.
Sure. Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, also coming up on the top of the hour, the House Oversight Committee had a few of the liberal state governors testify before them about immigration, the radical transgender movement, and more. And it was a lot more exciting than the Padilla thing. At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because of the back and forth. And the thing is, the funniest thing about Democrats is they will on their own promote stuff. You know, like Walz, Tim Walz was there, governor of Minnesota, and was asked about, remember where he said, I'll give you a ladder to climb the 30-foot wall?
Yeah.
And they hit him on it. He goes, oh, I don't remember saying that.
You're right, yeah.
So they won't, it's interesting, they will never defend themselves when cross-examined about where they really stand.
Exactly.
Why not?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. Well, it got interesting yesterday. The House, it was a House hearing with three governors, Tim Walz from Minnesota, Pritzker from Illinois, Hochul from New York.
All right.
So, yes, illegal immigration, sanctuary city policy, sanctuary state policy, the radical transgender movement, all topics that were brought up. And it got interesting, some of the back and forth back. It was like, I don't know, anywhere, it was like over 5 hours of testimony, so I didn't get to watch the whole thing. But one thing I did notice is the fact that they will on their own promote sanctuary city policies, but when they are confronted, they really don't wish to answer any of the questions.
No, they don't.
They don't passionately come out and say that the behavior and the legislation that they have signed or believed in, they won't stand behind it once they are being cross-examined. Number one, because it's so bad, that moment is so bad if you do. But I got to find the one where Pritzker, I don't know if this is in this audio cut, but Pritzker was challenged on the radical transgender movement. This isn't about that. It's not about that. Answer my question. Answer. I think maybe it wasn't Tom Emmer who asked it. Maybe it was Brandon Gill. I'll see if it was. I'll go back and look for that one. But this is Minnesota Congressperson Tom Emmer talking to Tim Walz at the House hearing on sanctuary cities and more.
Governor Walz, you signed the Health and Human Services Omnibus Bill into law in May of 2023. That bill expanded Minnesota Care to provide free health care to illegal aliens. You signed the Higher Education Omnibus Bill into law in May of 2023. That bill allows illegals to have their college tuition paid for by the state. You signed the Driver's License for All Act into law in March of 2023, and that bill allows illegals to receive driver's licenses. So, you claim you're not a sanctuary state. You just provide free health care, free college, and driver's licenses to illegal aliens. One reason you're here testifying before us today is because you refuse to cooperate with ICE. While states like Florida and Virginia empower their law enforcement to detain and remove criminal illegal aliens, you, sir, have done just the opposite. Your Attorney General is directing law enforcement to ignore ICE immigration detainers. Do you agree with the Attorney General's guidance?
Well, Congressman, it's good to see you again, and thank you for being here. First, I would say as my job as governor of Minnesota is to make Minnesota the best state in the nation.
Do you agree with the Attorney General's guidance?
Congressman, what I would say on this is that Minnesota follows all law. I would say
it's a very easy question. And again, if you claim you're not a sanctuary state, you just claim that you support policies. You're not a sanctuary state, but you support policies that prevent ICE from doing their job.
Congressman,
isn't that right?
That is incorrect, Congressman. We follow the same laws when you were in the Minnesota House. The law has not changed,
If you'll allow me, I've got limited time. Well, that's what you tweeted, by the way, sir. And on May 23rd, 2018, you tweeted, quote, "I support policies that keep law enforcement from enforcing federal laws," close quote. On May 17th, just this spring, at the University of Minnesota Law School's commencement ceremony, you said, quote, "Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets." When you said the words modern-day Gestapo, you were referring to ICE agents. Gestapo, by the way, sir, was the official secret police of Hitler's Nazi Germany. So you're calling ICE agents modern-day Nazis. Given the attacks on ICE agents that took place in Los Angeles over the weekend, don't you regard your dangerous inflammatory rhetoric as a problem?
The questions do you want me to answer first?
So, sir, it saddens me that you refuse to express regret from comparing ICE to Nazis. ICE agents are brave Americans who get up every morning, leave their families, and put their lives in harm's way to protect our country, sir. You, at the very least, owe an apology to these dedicated public servants. I will say, sir, inflammatory rhetoric such as yours and the other governors on this panel is responsible for putting a target on the back of every ICE agent who is risking their life to protect our communities. Minnesota is all too familiar, by the way, with the chaos that ensues when you refuse to work with law enforcement to enforce the law. In May 2020, looting, acts of violence, and arson occurred on your watch in Minneapolis after you refused to bring in the National Guard. Governor, your agenda is clear: free health care, free college and driver's licenses for illegals while handcuffing law enforcement when they're trying to protect our citizens and their communities. If you think that's not a sanctuary state, you shouldn't be governor. By turning Minnesota into a magnet for illegals, you have opened up our communities to dangerous criminals, including known terrorists, gang members, murderers, and child predators. You have sent a resounding message that if you're a hard-working, law-abiding citizen of Minnesota, Your safety and well-being are not the priorities of Tim Walz and his administration. But if you're coming to our state illegally, you're not only welcome with open arms, you're entitled to free stuff on the taxpayer's dime. This is absolutely disgraceful. Governor Walz, your sanctuary state agenda has been defined by your utter failure. You have failed to enforce the rule of law. You have failed to uphold our national sovereignty. And most importantly, you have failed the people of Minnesota. The time for radical sanctuary state policy, sir, is over. The voters made that clear last November when they elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. You remember him, don't you? Governor, the time for real leaders and real leadership is now. And with that, sir, actually, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record the governor's tweet that I referenced from May 23rd, 2018, which makes it clear his hatred for federal law enforcement. Thank
He was, the camera the entire time was on Walz.
Yeah, right.
The entire time was on Walz. And he's no jazz hands, binder hands. He's got the binder going back and forth, like he's jotting notes down, and the binders go, and you can see the fury on his face. But it's true, and they went through the Gestapo thing. Well, you don't know a lot of times who they are. They're undercover. Their cars aren't marked.
Right. Yeah.
As if that was his justification for calling them Gestapo.
Right. By the way, Democrats, your permission structure just crumbled. But it's important to point out.
And he was talking about the fact that we're in masks, and therefore you can't identify them.
Right.
And we know why they're wearing the masks, because liberals are attempting to dox.
Yes.
Target
them personally,
not just attempting. They have doxed these agents. They don't want to do that.
No,
they're forced to do it because of the incendiary language. But there was no jazz hands from Governor Walz.
No, didn't see any jazz hands. No jumping up and down and celebrating.
But it was a zoo there yesterday.
And why can't they own their convictions?
I don't know.
Wouldn't this be the place right in front of, in fact, sitting and taking questions from the political opposition? Wouldn't this be the place to espouse your convictions?
Yeah. Get up there and say.
Why do they always have to run?
Well,
hide from them.
And I think, the Republicans, if there's any criticism I have, you need to get to the minutia of it and say, when you have sanctuary cities, what you're saying is you are protecting. Please debate this with me. When you have a sanctuary city, what you're saying is that the freedom and protection of an illegal immigrant criminal is more important than the safety and security of the citizens of my city.
Right.
Tell me where I'm wrong on that.
I serve not the citizens of my town or state.
Right.
I serve people who are not citizens.
And are you doing it because you believe it, or you believe the citizens of, for example, if it was Walz, Minnesota, believe that the freedom of a legal immigrant, many times violent gang member criminals, are more important than the safety and security of the citizens of your state?
We see it play out time and time again. But it's important to have them on Capitol Hill so that they can be grilled in this manner, because you see them hiding from their own convictions. I don't know why. Why don't they own it? They say they espouse their views when they're anywhere else, when they're in front of a friendly audience, and then they cower down. Why would you do that? I would not be afraid to espouse my views anywhere, especially if the political opposition wants to question me about anything. In fact, that's where I go to work. That's where I espouse my views the loudest, because I know I can defeat their arguments. I have no question about that. None.
I do think there's another way to ask questions to and own them besides the yes and no answers and not getting an answer to it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you can destroy them by actually having the debate instead of just the yes or no questions.
Well, because in the debate, you corner them, and there really is no way out.
Right.
And
the yes or no's they will never answer,
and you
believe,
know they're not going to.
And you believe you get their win, got the win by that.
Yeah.
I believe you get the win. I believe you get the win. You're going to like this if you Jordan Peterson them.
Yes. Right.
Which is you take their argument and you destroy it point by point by point.
Yep.
You don't let them filibuster.
Right. Right. Exactly. You don't.
But you go after it. I got to find the one where Pritzker. I think it was Gill in Texas hitting him on the radical transgender movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty funny. It's actually pretty funny. I mean, the movement isn't funny. The misogyny isn't funny. The way they respond is. When we've been laughing all week, it's because of how the liberals respond to everything, which is just pure insanity.
Yeah, well, and it's weak.
Yep.
You know, you look at what Padilla did. You look at the governor of California, the mayor of Los Angeles, and everything going on out there. These are individuals who are weak. They don't have a conviction. They're radicals. They have radical convictions, but is that really true conviction?
Here's a shorter clip with Eli Crane and Tim Walz yesterday. Here we go.
What does ICE stand for, Governor? Immigration, custom, enforcement, right? These are the guys that are tasked with enforcing immigration, federal immigration laws.
That's right. That's their job. It's not the state's job.
You think that calling them Gestapo is helping? You're not standing in the way. None of the messaging, none of the rhetoric is standing in the way of this administration doing what they've been tasked to do. Is that what you're saying?
I think what would help them is to follow due process, and when they do these missions, do the things that we expect of law enforcement.
How about when you went on Anderson Cooper, Governor Walz, and you said, how high is this wall? If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in a 30-foot ladder factory. Do you think that helps our federal government carry out its law enforcement, its border security, and policy operations?
When did I say that?
You went on Anderson Cooper and said that. Do you not remember saying that? Because you've said so many outlandish things that you can't even keep track of them?
The point being is...
The clip is there for everybody. It's there for all Americans. If you guys want to go watch it, it's an easy Google. All right, Governor, you recently went on Gavin Newsom's podcast. You stated in regards to MAGA voters, I scare them a little bit, which is why they spend so much time on me. No, I'm serious because they know I can fix a truck. That's your direct quote. You also said on the show, I think I could kick most of their asses. I want to be very clear with you, Governor. You do scare us a bit, but it's not because you can fix a truck or change a tire. It's actually because of your radical left-wing agenda. You supported putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. You advocated for the disarming of Americans of their Second Amendment rights. You're pro-sanctuary city, as we have uncovered here today. You claim there is no guarantee to free speech when it comes to misinformation and hate speech. That right there is why the American people have such a hard time with you. It's not because we're crazy MAGA people. It's because of your radical left-wing agenda.
It's because you're nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think they can use those words, so they're not supposed to name.
Yeah, I guess. Well, when you say things like, I could kick most of their asses, what you're saying as a sitting governor, you're promoting violence. You're saying, because that tells me that's your go-to. Why not just say, I can defeat their arguments?
Yeah.
I can convince them that our side is right. Why not say that?
We should do that from now on. On Red Eye, our opinions are right because we'll beat you up.
That's right. The bully approach. See how well that works.
You realize how stupid it is when you try it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm right.
Yeah,
how do I know? Because I could kick your butt.
If I ever said that out loud, I'd be the one on the ground laughing.
I know. It's so stupid. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going back to third grade, which
Seriously.
Walz is. He's a child.
Yeah, he didn't even remember the investing in a ladder factory thing.
Oh, my gosh, that was such huge. Well, he's lying about that.
Of course
he remembers it.
Of course he's lying about it, but you look stupid in the lie.
Yeah.
How do you not see that in the moment when everybody knows you're lying and you're trying to pretend like you don't remember? Now you're going out of your way to look like something's wrong with you.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, the Air India plane crash. We'll get to more on that and just some of the speculation or some of the things that have been that people have talked about. Really not speculation, but as they look at that, because that was just when you saw it. You know, normally when we think of a plane crash, you know, you think of a plane losing control in the sky and completely coming down.
Yeah.
This almost looked like, when I first saw the video, I went, well, that's another plane. That must be just landing somewhere.
It looked like a landing otherwise.
Yeah.
If you didn't know what was going on and you were watching it, it looked like it was landing.
Yep. And more on the governors, the governors who were before the House Oversight Committee yesterday on sanctuary cities and more. We'll get to it all.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. All right, we got to get through all the audio here that we have because it is the Friday show, and we always get loaded up with it. This is Democratic Congressperson Stephen Lynch yesterday, all right? Now listen to this. All right, here we go.
All right.
This is the lunacy. This is the insanity of the left.
I'm proud of my Democratic colleagues who are willing to stand up to this thuggery. Trump is a wannabe gangster, and he's showing the world what he's about. And I'm proud. You know, my dad served in Second World War. He fought the Nazis in Northern Africa. He fought the Nazis on the Italian peninsula. And I think he's looking down right now, and he's happy that I'm fighting today's Nazis. He's proud of that.
I just like the way he talks.
Yeah. You're not saying anything different than anybody else in your party. Nazi, 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 blah, 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 blah.
And everybody knows. The thing is, you haven't convinced anybody because everybody knows Trump is not a Nazi.
In fact,
and
you're doing a disservice to any family member who came before you or anyone who fought the actual Nazis in trying to make it seem like he wants to do the same thing as Hitler. That's a lie which demeans and degrades the service of those men who fought against actual Nazis. You're a fake.
Yep. Getting back to some of the questioning with the governors yesterday on sanctuary cities and more, here's Elise Stefanik, a short audio clip with Kathy Hochul.
What about Raymond Rojas Basilio? Do you know who that is?
I'm going to tell you our overall policy, which will address all this.
I'll tell you who that is. He is an illegal who molested an 11-year-old in our state because, again, of your sanctuary state policies. This illegal was shielded from federal immigration enforcement and able to commit this heinous crime. And what about Wilson Castillo-Diaz? Do you know who that is?
I'm telling you this. We do cooperate fully with ICE in criminal prosecution. Our sanctuary
You're not advocating for these victims.
Only deal
this
with
is a 5-year-old who was raped on Long Island in Nassau County. You are not advocating on behalf of these victims. You are shielding illegals. Even in your opening statement, you prioritize putting illegals first.
But they are.
Yeah.
The whole sanctuary city concept is about protecting illegal immigrant criminals.
Yes.
Everybody knows it. Why don't you stand up and say, yes, that's what we're about?
Well, again, why can't they have a conviction when they're sitting there right there? We know what they stand for. Why wouldn't you use this opportunity to shout at the top of your lungs what you actually stand for?
All right, this is Brandon Gill, Representative Gill with Pritzker, as they move into the radical transgender movement. Here it is.
Here. Mr. Governor, do you think that biological men should be able to use women's restrooms?
I'm not sure how this has to do with immigration.
It's just a yes or no question.
Why are you
It's very easy to answer.
this?
Do you
I
think
thought
that
we were
men should be using
doing
women's
fact
restrooms?
finding. I'm sorry?
Do you think men should be allowed in women's restrooms?
I'm not sure why this has come to this issue.
You
It has
tweeted
nothing
that
to do
as
with
a
immigration.
protest against President Trump, everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today. Have you ever used the women's restroom?
Not that I can recall ever, sir. No.
You wanted everybody else to do it, but you didn't?
Sir, I'm not sure why we're on a topic that has nothing
I'm asking
to do
you,
with
you're
today's hearing.
advocating for men to use women's restrooms, but you didn't do it?
I do not advocate that, no.
Well, actually, you did. You said everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today.
I can tell you that you are
You regret
politicizing
saying
this
this?
in a way that what we ought to be focusing on is
Do you
the
regret
failure of the federal
encouraging men to
government
use women's restrooms?
and the Congress to deal with immigration reform.
Do you regret encouraging men to use women's restrooms?
Again, you're taking us on topics that have.
Did you ever
nothing to
consider
do
that
with
women don't
the
want you
subject
in their,
that you
in their
invited us to?
bathrooms?
Can't talk about it. Again, why can't you proudly talk about it? Wow. Why can't you talk about what you believe at any moment in front of anybody? In fact, if you believe the opposition is wrong, the political opposition is wrong, then you believe you can defeat them at any moment. You would see this as an opportunity.
And then I found this one with Walz when he's asked the question. Here we go.
What is a woman? What is a woman is the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Democrats, are you really that stupid?
Have they not learned?
Seriously, Democrats, are you really that stupid? You got to ask the question. These are your elected representatives. You have a Supreme Court justice who couldn't answer the question.
These are governors.
Nobody can. You're sitting there saying that a trans woman is a woman, yet you can't identify what a woman is.
And if you're on the left and you agree with everybody on your side, you have to be angry that these people go up there and can't debate the issue.
Yeah.
Wondering why can't they champion for your issues?
We picked the wrong. We're on the wrong side of every issue, and we know it because when we're cross-examined, we can't defend ourselves
Right.
at where we stand on the actual issues.
Right.
We pretend or just ignore what our positions are on the issue.
Right.
By the way, just some advice, that's not a way to run a political party. You should believe in things that you can promote specifically, passionately, and consistently, and they can't do it ever.
Nope.
Especially when cross-examined by the other side. And you made the case earlier, Eric, and I think it's a great point to make, that we've done this our whole lives. And the best part is when somebody confronts you on your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best part.
Oh, yeah. I want to take that opportunity right there.
Yeah, that's the best part of it all, because you're like, thank you. Because not only can I promote what I believe, but I can tear apart what you believe. And that's really what, debate, arguing, whatever you want to call it, that's what it's about. It's not only about winning your argument or winning with your opinion, it's also defeating their opinion. So you should be looking forward to it if you have any confidence in where you stand on any issue.
Right.
I just can't imagine a mind that is so passionate on the issues. You saw Tim Walz, playing, putting his hands up and everything else. And, saying, if you got a 20-foot wall, I'll build a 30-foot ladder. When confronted, I don't remember that. Of course he does. He's lying.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
goes out of his way to look stupid so he can lie about it.
I just can't imagine being an adult human being that has promoted something year after year after year, and as soon as I have the opportunity to be cross-examined on it, which we have always loved.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
They completely and totally crumble.
Yep. Because when they asked me the question about what I believe, I would say, look, I know most jerks in this position would say, I'm glad you asked, and we know they're not really glad you asked, but I'm totally glad you asked that question, because I'm about to lean into it full stop. This is not hard to do if you have convictions. They're radicals. They espouse radical convictions everywhere else. Why not there? Why wouldn't you use that opportunity to, again, advocate for what you believe in? When you do it everywhere else, but you won't do it here. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? I don't know what Hochul's approval numbers are. I don't know what Tim Walz's approval numbers are. But they won elections. So I don't know what you're afraid of. Hochul just had this attitude yesterday that she was beyond reproach. When you watched her demeanor was, okay, fine. The back and forth with Elise Stefanik. Oh, I guess you're going to tell me. They really do believe they're beyond reproach. But I would take that opportunity, especially as a governor, to fight for the people of my state and for the issues that got me there, that got me elected.
February. KSTP Survey USA poll. Tim Walz has a 52% approval rating, 44% disapprove.
All right.
And they say what's striking, the analysis about Walz's approval, is that it remains strong. He seems to be the Teflon governor.
All right. The permission structure.
Yeah.
Well, if he's Teflon again, then what would he be worried about?
Well, but it's important to understand that as radical as he is, you must understand those remaining in the Democratic Party are just as radical. That's one of the things that isn't brought up when you have, when you have the Roy Teixeiras, you have the Douglas Schoens out there, you even have the Serpents out there when he isn't being anti-Semitic like he was last week, because he's disappeared really since that little thing. But even they have, they come out and say we've got to moderate. The voter, the Democratic voter, doesn't want to moderate.
Right.
They don't wish to moderate.
Right. Yeah.
The majority of Democrats still believe in all the insanity that the Democrats in Congress believe in. They believe in the radical transgender movement. They believe in the delusion that a man can be a woman if the man says so. They are okay with the misogyny of women in the radical transgender movement. They are okay with identity politics, judging people by groups and not individuals. Why? Because they believe they're the group that are all victims.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a victim, there's got to be a group out there that's the oppressor.
Yeah.
There always has to be somebody to blame for my lot in life. That's where the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party has become the party of the pathology of dependency.
Yep.
That's their drug.
And the
that's
eternal victim.
That's their religion.
Yeah.
I'm owed something because I'm a victim.
Right. Padilla had to make himself a victim yesterday.
Yeah, great point. I'm going to make myself a victim now.
Right. He knows exactly what he was doing.
Yep.
That was his only intent.
It's where they are. So when you're a victim and all you do is you want stuff, you want somebody else to be blamed for your lot in life and then to be taken care of, well, you don't care if you belong to the party of the racist identity politics. You don't care if you belong to the party of misogyny, of the radical transgender movement, the women hatred that exists there. Oh, by the way, I got to find that audio cut.
Yeah?
Was it Stefanik or was it? Oh, I got to find it because it was. Oh, she just pounded. Forgot whether it was Walz or whoever pounded on the misogyny. Had all the right language that we have said about the radical transgender movement.
Yeah.
This isn't a party that cares. It's a party that believes that if we can convince you you're a victim and that you're owed something, then you'll buy along with the identity politics and the misogyny that we also throw in there.
Yep.
And the celebration of criminals, criminal activity, and criminal illegal immigrants, as we have seen over the last week.
Yep.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, now, in fact, because our show ends in an hour. And when our show ends, well, we record the entire show, then it becomes our podcast. And we know everybody isn't up between midnight and 5. So if you want to catch the beginning of the show, the end of the show, whatever part of the show you want to catch, you can do it on our Red Eye Radio app. And also, if for some reason you can't listen to one of our great radio stations overnight, we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. Oh, I found the audio cut I wanted to get where one of the Republican congresspersons uses the exact words that we have used for the radical transgender movement for such a long time. We'll have that coming up. Plus, the latest, what a lot of pilots are saying about the Air India crash, and the latest on Israel attacking Iran yesterday. Did I read on the air that Scott Jennings saying? Did I read it? Yeah, Scott Jennings saying that. It was quiet.
Who was in Israel?
Yeah.
And there was word from Iraq that the drones were crossing Iraq airspace. We heard from Jordanian officials that they were protecting their airspace by taking down missiles and drones within their own airspace. And Israel is saying on the drones they have worked to take down, again, some of the drones outside of Israel's territory, but we'll follow that as updates come in throughout the morning.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.